Today, we are reviewing the new Tanchjim. Not that. Ola. Tanchjim Ola. This little $40 IEM has been a complete joy to listen to. Many pros to talk about, very minimal cons, and I want to say it's one of the best you can grab for the price, especially if you love vocals. Later on in this video, we're also going to be comparing it to the T2, T2 Plus, the Blonde 03, the Melee, and of course, the darling of the audiophile community, the Hardener. So stay tuned. Hey friends, Tim here, welcome back to another video on Guess Audio, and today, Tanchjim Ola. I don't know why I keep throwing boxes. It's fun, I guess. Let's start out with the bass of these IEMs. These things have virtually no bass boost, so the bass is very minimal at best. There's a little bit of mid bass, but when it comes to sub bass, it's virtually non-existent. So that rumbly feeling, you're not gonna get any of that in these IEMs. And I know that already excludes 99% of people who are watching this video, because a lot of you guys out there love to have some kind of bass, but not everything is bass, guys. Not all good IEM need bass, all right? So you might want to keep watching to see if you want to pick up something that has a referencey style, a true neutral style signature for once, to really expand your taste, expand your palette, all right? And that's what the Ola can do. So bass-wise, unfortunately, not for bass heads, but what it lacks in power, it makes up for in bass control. This thing is superbly well controlled. There's no bass bleed at all from the bass to the mid-range. Well, there really can't be any bass bleed if there's no bass. So that just comes with the style of tuning, I guess. But nevertheless, a very clean bass and lower mid-range separation. Bass impact is good. It is a dynamic driver and it does have that dynamic impact, though lacking in the power department, but the impact itself still good. On to the mid-range. This is probably the biggest selling point of the Ola. The mid-range is so beautifully done, clean lower mids to bass separation, all the way up to a very energetic upper mid-range while not coming out shouty in any way. It's energetic, it's lively, it's natural feeling as well, though slight bit of unevenness for those veterans who can pick that up. But for those of you guys who are newer to the audio scene, that little bit of unevenness you won't pick up at all. What you're gonna hear instead is this natural, lively mid-range. The instruments, the vocals, whether male or female, has sufficient room, sufficient energy from the upper mids and the treble to sound natural and sound very nice. So yeah, that's a lot of positive things to say about a $40 IEM, but it's all true. And that's the thing that gets me the most excited about the Ola when I first heard it, is that it just sounds so beautiful. And for me, a vocal lover, especially listening to like K-pop, J-pop, anime soundtracks where there's a lot of female vocals, this thing shines for me and it sounds so fantastic. So if you love those genres like myself, this $40 unit is probably the cheapest one I would recommend you get to enjoy those music to the fullest, or to enjoy the vocalist to the fullest. On to the treble area. This thing has sufficient amount of treble, good amount of treble, nothing too fatiguing, enough to be energetic and lively. I would go as far to say that it has a slightly bit tamer nature to it. It has enough treble, yes, but it leans a little bit tame. So again, no fatigues, no sibilances whatsoever, just enough to bring vocalist to its natural level. And that's something that is quite hard to do in IEMs in general. Most IEMs just mess up the treble completely. A lot of IEMs don't have good treble, but this has very nicely tuned treble, smooth as well. When it comes to the revealing factor or the micro details in the treble, I would say that this has enough to reveal some details, but I wouldn't say it highlights anything in particular. There's enough there to get a little bit of extra bit of crispiness out of percussions, for example, but not nearly enough to make a lot of the really little micro nuances shine. It needs just a bit more treble than that. It falls just a bit short, but yeah, overall, great quality treble nonetheless. Technical performance, details, soundstage, and imaging. Detail-wise, let's bring up my scale right here. I am happy to announce that the detail on this is slightly above the Blonde 03. Not quite the Starfield, but slightly bit above the Blonde 03. And this has to do mainly with how wide the soundstage sound due to how good the treble area is and the bass control and the lack thereof of bass. The stage feel very open, uncongested, and wide. Especially for the price range, it is probably the widest sounding stage you can grab for under $50. The next step up, of course, would be the Aria and the Titan S, but those are in, the $79, $80 price bracket. For half the price of those two IEMs, this is the most detailed and the widest stage you can grab, coming just behind the Starfield, which also means it comes right behind the Aria and the Titan S as well. On to imaging. This is probably the poorest aspect of the Ola. You don't really get pinpoint imaging. It's a little bit smudgy here and there. You get left and right. You don't really get a lot of depth with this. So yeah, just not an impressive imaging capability. But nevertheless, the details and the soundstage really save the technical performance of these IEMs, especially for the price. Now onto the comparison segment. First up, we have the Tin Hi-Fi T2. Now this is a mid-rangey tuned IEM. Most of you guys like this for the vocals, for the mid-range performance. I am here to tell you that you don't need your T2 anymore. Just take the T2, sell it if you have it, or ignore it if you were thinking about buying it, and just go grab the Ola instead. Simply because the Ola has better details, better soundstage, more natural tuning as well, no bass bleeding into the mid-range like the Tin T2 has. The Ola is simply superior in almost every aspect, and it's also cheaper by $10. Next is TNT2 Plus. Now this is more of a fair comparison. The TNT2 Plus does have good levels of details, better than the original T2. It has a signature that is different than the Ola, so more of a side grade, if you will. The TNT2 Plus is more of a warm V-shape, has some bass, has decent vocals, not the best vocals. I would say that the Ola is better in details and soundstage still, is not better in the bass. The T2 Plus wins in the bass. When it comes to overall tuning in the upper mids and the treble, the Ola is also better there. I would say on paper, the Ola is still the better IEM, but it really comes down to preference, whether you like a warm V-shaped kind of signature or you like a more referencey style signature. If you want more mainstream fun bass, you go with TNT2 Plus. If you want referencey, neutrally tuned, beautiful vocals, you would go for the Ola. Next is the Blonde 03. Similar things that I said for the T2 Plus can be applied to the Blonde 03 because Blonde 03 also has a warm V-shaped signature, although much more bassier than the T2 Plus and also tamer in the upper mids and treble energy than the T2 Plus as well. Overall, I would pick Ola over Blonde 03 simply because it is more balanced tuned, it has better details and also better soundstage than the Blonde 03. The Blonde 03 for me is simply a little bit too bassy, a little bit too colored for my personal taste. So for me, I would pick the Ola. Even though this is $10 more, it is absolutely worth it in my book. Moving on, we have the Tripo and Melee. Now, Tripo and Melee can be described as a very refined Blonde 03. The bass is better, more well-controlled, has a little bit more bass as well, but it fixes the upper mid-range energy and the treble of the Blonde. I would say between the two, tuning-wise, I still prefer the Ola's type of tuning, but those of you who prefer more V-shape can go with the Melee as well. Both of these are very good IEM for the price. If you want more fun, of course, the Melee. If you want more referencey style, of course, the Ola. Detail-wise, I would say the Ola and the Melee are very similar. Maybe the Ola is slightly bit better, but soundstage, the Ola is definitely better than the Melee. So again, side grade, depends on what kind of style you want. V-shape, go with Melee. If you want referencey, go with Ola. Last but not least, we have the Hardener, of course, the darling, the love of the audiophile community. This thing has the closest tuning to the Ola, being that the bass, the lower mids, and the upper mid range is very similar. The biggest difference here is in the treble. The Hardener is very sparkly and lively. It has a lot of wow factor when you listen to it because it just jumps at you with all this energy and it's very beautiful to listen to. Although though it does come at a cost of being potentially fatiguing for long listening session because the treble is just so much, but for me, the Hardener is still one of the most beautiful IEMs you can listen to under $50, and it's very rare and unique as well for that price range. Now the Ola is a little bit more tamed in the treble area, more naturally done there, smoother as well. So the Ola is simply the Hardener with correct treble, I guess. Not overly sparkly, just very naturally done treble. So both of these, I would say, are fantastic IEM tuning wise. You can't go wrong with either one of them. If you want a more natural style, you would go for the Ola. If you want the Ola with a little bit more energy, you would go for the Hardener. Now, detail wise, this is where you find the biggest difference as well. The Ola is more resolving than the Hardener overall. The Hardener, yes, is more revealing because the treble area is so much, you get a lot of little micro nuances, but at the end of the day, it's very soft in its presentation in comparison to the Ola, which is more, I would say, more crispy, more clean cut. The Ola is better on paper, but you can't go wrong with either one of those two IEMs. I enjoy both of them, and I would even recommend you get both. Maybe the Ola can be your daily driver, while the Hardener can be for when you want that little bit of extra bite and extra energy to your music. Final verdict, Tanchjim Ola, $40, love it. High recommendation if you're into vocals and mid-range clarity in general. If you want wider stage and great detail for the price, the Ola is fantastic. For bass lover, not gonna be for you in any way at all, but if you're a bass lover who have not listened to anything referencing before, I urge you to try the Ola. It's $40. You can try a whole new signature that's done very well that you've not tried before, and I encourage you to really do that to expand your palette. But yeah, Tanchjim Ola, really love it. High recommendation.